Postman Pat, and his robot cat. So Stephen Mangan came on the show a couple of weeks ago talking about doing the voice of Postman Pat, although, of course, he doesn't do the voice of Postman Pat. He does half the voice of Postman Pat. The other half of the voice of Postman Pat is done by Ronan Keating. So because what happens is, basically, Postman Pat is, for complicated reasons... Yes, he's a postman. Postman Pat is, for complicated reasons, attempting to win a holiday in Italy for himself and his wife. And the only way he can do this is to enter this talent show, which is overseen by Simon Cowbell, here all week. And then he suddenly becomes a TV star when he sings, because unbelievably, when he opens his voice, he sings with the voice of Ronan Keating. Most bizarrely. And he's going to have to go off to London to take part in the finals. Meanwhile, his round, which, as you'll know in the past, knock, ring, brrr, letters through your door, human touch, is going to be taken away by an army of Patbots. Here's a clip.
The Patbot 3000. This mechanical marvel will be taking over your postal duties. Temporarily, of course.
You're teasing. Nobody will really think that's me.
Hello, Pat. You can count on me. The special delivery always gets through. Mission accomplished.
Oh, perhaps they will.
Of course, you mustn't breathe a word of this to anyone. The consequences would be unfortunate.
Yes, mustn't dilute your brand, as they say. Postman Pat.
Excuse me, sir, but doesn't this all seem a bit dishonest?
Pat, think of your friends at the sorting office. Think of Bill.
Ben.
Whatever. We want to do everything we can to make sure that office stays open, don't we?
Well, I suppose it would be all right for a little while.
Wonderful, wonderful, lads. That's the team spirit.
A little bit Wallace and Gromit there at the end. Yes. And in fact, there is a little bit of Wallace and Gromit with sort of wrong trousers in terms of the Patbots and the way the Patbots walk. I think, to be fair, you'd have to say, in terms of spin-offs of animated TV kids shows, the high watermark, regardless of what you think, is Dougal and the Blue Cat, which genuinely kind of expanded upon the world of the Magic Roundabout and did something really rather wonderful with it. Made something that was strange and eerie and a bit creepy.
And a bit boring.
Well, you think that, but a lot of people don't. One of them being me. That's that then. Yeah, there was later on, thank you, that's... What do you call it? Trots in frocks say you're wrong. Yeah. Later on, there was the 21st Century Magic Roundabout movie, which is, CG digimation. And unfortunately, the Postman Pat movie is much closer to that, because the original Postman Pat series was, stop motion, kind of old-fashioned, and it was good for, preschoolers, and it had a very solid following. It had a very, very solid following. I mean, I think generations of people have grown up watching Postman Pat. So what they've done now is they've given it the new sort of sparkly technique, and as is the way with these things, they immediately break all the confines of the other thing. So he's no longer in Greendale. He's no longer a postman. In fact, what he is, he's a singing star. He takes off his glasses and has to go off to London. And it's like any of those things, like Holiday on the Buses, or, you take the thing that people know and people love, and then you go somewhere else with it, and it suddenly becomes not the thing. So the first problem is Postman Pat the movie isn't really a Postman Pat movie. Second thing is, there is something very weird about the fact that he speaks with the voice of Stephen Mangan and then sings with the voice of Ronan Keating, and there is a complete disconnect between those two things. I think they should have just let Stephen Mangan sing. You said that you've heard him sing, and he can sing anyway.
He's good, yeah. He's quite a talented musician. So
seems like a weird one.
I do think sometimes you think, okay, I can tell it's not really, but it's such a completely different voice.
Yes.
I wonder what on earth the filmmakers were thinking.
It's like everything about... Well, what they were thinking was, we'd like to have Ronan Keating in the credits, because, in the credits you've got, for example, Rupert Grint, you've got Stephen Mangan, you've got Jim Broadbent, you've got...
And Rupert Grint was allowed to sing himself.
Yes.
So...
I know, but then it's just a matter of then, and then we've got Ronan Keating on there because we kind of can have. So Stephen Mangan's Postman Pat, but Ronan Keating as Postman Pat's singing voice. But it's weird. It's just
and doesn't fit.
Yeah, and again, you think back to Dougal and the Blue Cat, in which all the voices, with the exception of Fenella Fielding doing the blue voice, all the voices were done brilliantly by Eric Thompson, whether it's talking or singing, no matter which character it is. So, and then the third point, and you kind of raised this with Stephen Mangan, was when he came on the show, you'd seen the film and I hadn't, is that although there's very little in this to appeal to the over sixes or the over sevens, there's enough in it to creep the under fives right out. I mean, if you're one of the, Mrs. Goggins, she's lovely, Patbots. And there is a sort of Doctor Who quality. I mean, the fact that David Tennant's in there as well, but there is a sort of Doctor Who cyborg army quality about the Patbots, because they've got this weird grin and they go chun, 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 and then the robot cat. So it's a weird thing. It's not really Postman Pat. He stops being Postman Pat. He speaks with two voices, and it's got cyborg armies in it. I mean, it's not without any redeeming features. I think there's a small window for an audience to enjoy it, but it isn't a Postman Pat movie, and it's not very good, and it's very confused about exactly what it is. And if you want proof of that, literally put it next to Dougal and the Blue Cat, and go, you know,
is it anti-globalisation? Is there a keen political message?
Well, you know, the funny thing is that as a trotting frog, I was kind of, you know, you're looking for that. Oh, it's a whole thing. You know, the automation is taking over and we're getting rid of the human touch. But because the weirdest thing is that the human touch that's really missing is from the movie itself. It feels terribly mechanical.